So the environment that I grew up in was, maybe it wasn't the environment you grew up in, but it probably did the same thing. So, I grew up in an environment of mental health issues, of addiction issues, of violence. But what it did is it drove me to try to escape who I was. And that, I think, is what's universal. I think so many of us have lived lives where we try to perform, we try to create perceptions in these unhealthy ways. And so that is where I think it's important, what I've learned and what I've done throughout my life to regain access to that is what I teach people, is what I help people to reconnect to. Along the way, another thing that occurred was a very significant event was that my brother killed himself. And, I fancied myself someone that helped people and, I was coaching people and I was teaching workshops all over the world. And it was pretty humbling and nearly destroyed me that I couldn't help my own brother. And he had mental health issues. And, there were things that prevented me from being able to help no matter what. But it had me go in and reflect and look at myself. A tsunami of grief came for me, which then brought all kinds of other things. And all of that drove me to look at myself more deeply than I ever had. And what came from that was a level of self-acceptance, a level of seeing that I was a whole being, good, bad, ugly, bizarre, and that all of it needed to be integrated. That was then what led me into doing psychedelics and pursuing that in a very intentional way, in a way that was not just for recreation purposes. It was not just to go out and to connect with people and have a good time. It was actually to not have a good time. It was to force myself into experiences that were challenging and that were hard in order to integrate those parts of myself, the parts of myself that for years and years and years, I tried to cut little pieces off and get rid of, and cut them off and hide them. Rather than do that, what I started to do is to find them and to bring them back in and to anchor myself to them so that I could then also show people they too need to recollect and regain all of those pieces and all of those parts of themselves. An important part, I think all of us, many of us have this ability to disassociate, to disappear from the situations that we're in, space out, or go somewhere else. And what I've learned was more important was to stay associated and to remain integrated, but to disidentify, to change how I identified with who I was and what I believed who I was. This now leads me to here, to today, where what's important to me is to help people do that stuff, is to help them stopping disassociating and leaving themselves and running away from challenging situations that continue and force them over and over and over to resort to the adapted behaviors that they do to try to get their needs met, and to simply understand that we all deserve love. We all deserve to experience joy and to nourish ourselves and to replenish our banks of soul dollars.